All right, boys. So I recently did a little unboxing video of the two controllers that I got in the mail. And normally I wouldn't do something like this because I don't really make content. Like that's not really something I do, but I have been so blown away by the Nacon Revolution Pro 5 that I feel the need to actually dig into some of its features a bit because it's kind of nuts. I was not at all prepared for how many things that this controller can do. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna open up Revolution 5 Pro, and my controller is plugged into my MacBook right now, so um, you'll be able to see the full software interface and everything. So PlayStation 5 continuous guest because I don't have my IRL name is Connor, if you didn't know, which you should. But anyway, so obviously we can do any sort of profile mapping we want. So if I go to edit profile and I look at this back, right, these are my back buttons, and I have one bound to the left stick, one bound to X, one bound to left on the D-pad, one bound to up on the D-pad. And this is for Apex. X is jump, left stick is crouch, left on the D-pad is melee, up on the D-pad is heal. And that's all great, whatever, cool stuff. However, the thing that I really want to get into is the sticks customization stuff. And I'm actually not going to look at it on this profile. This is my Apex profile. I haven't done a ton on it. All I have is linear 1-to-1. I didn't actually use shooter pro mode, so for some context, shooter pro mode is basically removes the dead zone entirely, even from the controller standpoint. So there's no dead zone at all, and it gives you more accurate response, obviously, because there's no dead zone, but there is going to be a little bit of stick drift. Even though it is a Hall effect stick, you still get a tiny bit of stick drift. Not a ton, but enough that it's significant. And personally, I think having zero stick drift is actually more important than people like to give it credit for. If you're using, for Apex specifically, if you're using a Kraber or any sort of marksman weapon, sniper, etc., being able to put your reticle in a place as a controller player is really important, because you're often, the way you use a sniper on controller is not like the way it is on M&K. On M&K, you would try to move your mouse and click on their head, right? Where on controller, most of the time you're actually probably putting your crosshairs near the person, as near as possible, and then you wait for them to strafe into your crosshair, and then you react and you shoot, right? Because yes, you can just try to point it at them, but often they'll be strafing, whatever, and so you'll move towards them and they'll move away from you, and at distance, that cannot be great. And so you get a lot more consistency by putting your crosshair really close to them and then shooting when they actually cross your crosshair for those sorts of big bursts of marksman damage. Now, anyway, the features, though, that are available to you here on the sticks customization are mind-blowing. I've used many controllers, many modded pro controllers with different paddles, etc. I've never seen features like this offered on a controller before, and I genuinely think it's revolutionary, which fits with the name. By the way, this isn't a paid ad or anything. I wish it was a paid ad, but they don't pay me to say shit like this. Anyway, so in my Apex controllers, we'll look at my left stick. My right stick is completely linear without shooter pro mode. However, I do have sensitivity plus on. What sensitivity plus is essentially, instead of giving you what the controller processes on your input, it kind of bypasses that and just gives you raw input to the game. So most controllers, when you aim with the right stick, the controller does a little bit of smoothing and does a little bit of adjustment to be okay, oh, they move to the left and then they move to the right. Okay, where do they actually want to place it? It kind of tries to split the difference, right? It's assuming what you're doing to some extent. And same for button presses and stuff. It creates a little bit of input delay, etc. But the goal is to make a more casual friendly experience, right? I'm a casual gamer. Oh, I double clicked X, or maybe I clicked X really far apart, etc. Whatever. Or I look to the right, but I meant to look to the left, or I looked to the left faster than I meant to, etc., etc. What sensitivity plus is it's basically bypassing all of that sort of processing that the controller does, and it just is raw input. Just whatever you do with your stick, that's what goes to the game. And it's actually crazy because I hadn't actually turned the setting on initially when I first started using this controller. And then I turned it on and I went in game and I was in firing range. And the difference I felt was so absurd. Like, it felt like suddenly the game was listening to what my hands were doing for the first time. Like the only way I can describe it as playing on a PlayStation 5 is it's what I imagine it's like to play on PC, where like when you aim somewhere, the controller actually aims there instead of being like, oh, do you really want to aim here? And like, it used to feel like my controls were kind of sluggish, but now everything feels really, really snappy. So I highly recommend, if you have this controller, use the sensitivity plus feature, or if you're interested in getting this controller, this feature alone makes it worth it. Like I would say it saved my life. That's a little dramatic, but all right, we'll move on though. On the left stick, you'll notice my selected shaft, AO shaft, anyway, is large 30 degrees, where on the right stick, it's just small 45. So one of the features of this controller, and if you watch my unboxing video, I kind of glossed over it because I didn't actually really clock it at the time, is there are these circular rings that you can put on the stick of your controller underneath the thumb pad that make the controller stick itself, like the shaft, thicker, or you can leave it at default, which is small, which is the 45 degree, right? And what that actually does is it makes it so that the amount of total travel distance that your controller's control stick has is smaller. So as you can look over here, 0.1, 0.2, right? So 0.1 is at 24% to the right, and that's 50, and then 48 is 99. Where on the right stick, where I have the default setting, it's 33 is 33, 66 is 66, and then it's like a full linear curve. And what that does is it makes it so that if I'm strafing left to right, I keep switching directions, my thumb doesn't have to move as far to go from left to right. And so on my right stick, my left stick, my movement stick, I actually don't super care about the super fine movements. Like, I still want it for Apex because there's moments where like I'm walking up on a team and I don't want to make super loud sprint slide footsteps. And so I'll slow walk. So I want to be able to tilt forward without initiating the auto sprint by pushing all the way forward. So I still want some of this curve. And the reason I bring this up is we'll get to it later when I get to my Overwatch settings, where I don't want any of this curve. But in Apex specifically, I do want some of this curve. But what it does is it makes my strafe speed and my movement feel a lot more snappy and responsive because my left thumb does not have to move as far to tell the game to strafe this far, right? Or to move this fast, etc. So you get less of that, oh, I changed directions in my movement while strafing, and so I slow down because I'm on a control stick. Now, you can actually make it so that that doesn't happen basically at all. But for Apex, I wouldn't super recommend it. I went into the firing range and I tested it out in third person to see what it looked like of like left, right strafing with this versus like if you had like a steep 100% curve. And it's definitely still effectively the same because the move speed in Apex relative to your stick input is pretty fast. In Overwatch, it's a little different though, so we'll talk about that in a sec. But this sort of customization is genuinely revolutionary in my opinion, because one of the problems that you experience as a controller player, for anybody who's not a controller player, and I know all you controller players watching this might, I'm talking like I'm fucking talking to a bunch of people. Explo, if you're watching this, you'll relate to this. Chris, if you're watching this, like, this is for you to understand what I'm talking about. Anyway, as a controller player, you experience a problem where when you transfer from game to game, the sense stuff is all different. It's like, okay, this game uses percentages, and this game uses this, and this game has this response curve, and this game has this response curve. And so when you transfer from game to game, you can get a really inconsistent experience of like, how do you get muscle memory with your aim if you switch games? Because if you ever switch games, it's different. It's not like an M and K where you can be like, okay, this is my DPI, and EDPI is just sense times actual DPI. And you can make your sense the same in every single game. There's like a little FOV weirdness, but generally, no matter what first-person shooter you play, you can make your sense the same. In the controller world, it's very different, where like every game has its own little quirks and weirdness about aim assist and sensitivity and stuff. So every game aiming feels differently. What this allows you to do is make the game feel the way you want it to, regardless of what the systems in place are. So, and another thing is most games these days, at least no matter how whatever weirdness is going on, often will offer a linear curve option. And so you can just be like, okay, I'm going to set my curve in game to be linear and my sense in game to be some number. And then you can make minor adjustments here to make it do whatever you want. And with that, like as a preamble, we're going to move back and look at my Overwatch settings. So for my Overwatch settings, and one super cool feature also this has is it has a little LED ring around the control stick. Just a little side tangent that I've never seen a controller have this, but it's kind of like a mouse but you can set these colors and it doesn't actually match. Like, it doesn't look like this on my actual controller, but it does look pretty fucking cool, and it's nice to have it as, like, a feature just to kind of make things a little more exciting. And also, it helps you distinguish between your different profiles. So I have, like, one color ring for my Overwatch one, a different color ring for my Apex one, etc. But anyway, moving back to what we were talking about, which is sticks. So I'll edit the profile, we'll go to sticks and D-pad. And so you'll see my Overwatch sticks are very customized. And the reason for this is because Overwatch is the way the aiming settings are set up, in my opinion, are very poor. Basically, you have the option between straight linear, there's like an exponential ramp, which and then there's dual zone, and there's one more, I can't remember exactly what it is, but generally, most people recommend either linear or dual zone because if you're trying to get good at aiming in a video game, you want linear. Like, yes, exponential is nice in the sense that it's comfortable, right? And like in Apex, there's like classic, which is a pretty steep exponential curve, etc. It's like a curve that looks like this. It's like a C. But the downside of that is there's a lot of inconsistency because your thumb, yes, can memorize, oh, this far is this speed and this far is this speed. Like your brain can eventually get used to that. However, when you transfer from game to game, that curve is going to be slightly different for every game. And so you're much better off just being like, I'm going to learn what linear feels like, and I'm going to get that muscle memory for linear, and then I'm going to lock it the fuck in, and every game I go to, at least I'll have some sort of like basis of consistency. However, in Overwatch, the problem is most characters don't have an aim down sights. And what that means is you're trapped in this space of like, and there's only linear, right? So there's no ramp up time or like turn speed equivalent. Because in Apex, 4-3 linear isn't truly linear. It's linear for like 90% of the stick left to right, which is what this is, right? Like, so from like 0 to like 90, it's truly linear. But then after you go past that 90 threshold, you're in turn mode. And so the game actually has like turning assist to make you turn faster. So the game recognizes, okay, you're going all the way to the right or all the way to the left. You want to turn around right now. You don't want to you're not tracking, right? Overwatch doesn't do that. On the linear curve, there's nothing like that. And so you just have pure linear, which means your turn speed is directly limited by how high or low your sense is in a way that it isn't in Apex. And that's really debilitating in a game with no aim down sights. Because in Apex, you can just kind of be like, because like most pros play 4-3 linear in Apex, which means 4 if I'm hip fire, not ADS, 4 speed, which is pretty fast, pretty responsive. And then 3 if I'm ADS, which is much more precise, which is ADS aim down sights. Anyway, Overwatch doesn't have that. And because it doesn't have that, you get trapped where you're like, I have to split the difference between being able to turn quickly and flick quickly and react to what's going on, but I also need it to be slow enough that I can actually aim at distance. And so that's why dual zone, the setting dual zone, exists in Overwatch, which is basically, instead of a linear curve, you have a curve that looks like what I have here, right? But it's more like this and then like this, if you can see my mouse, where it's like up to 85 and then it's like steeper after a certain point. But the problem is it's like 85, right? And when you're flicking around and stuff, you're not gonna like basically the threshold point is fixed and you can't change where it changes sensitivities. And the point where it's fixed is too low. So you're like stuck between this really low sense and this really high sense. And neither feels great because the high sense, if you turn it up enough that the low sense feels good, is too high. And then the low sense, if you try to make it comfortable for the low sense, then the high sense is too low. And so you get stuck in this like window of just nonsense where it's awful no matter what you do. And so what I've done with my settings is I fixed this. So what I did was I made my curve linear in Overwatch. I set the sense setting I wanted for my high turn speed setting, right? And it's a number from 0 to 100. And then I did the math. I said, okay, so I want my sense to be like 40 out of 100. But my turn speed sense, I want to be like 80 out of 100. And so I said, okay, from 0 to 95, we're going to have 50% of my stick input be what is sent to the game. So if I push my stick 25% to the right, that's actually getting like 12.5%, right? Or if I send 50% to the right, that's 25% to the right. But the moment I hit 95%, now we're in turn mode. Like I want the stick to recognize effectively, okay, we're past 95, you're trying to turn, give me the full 84 turn speed. And so what that does is it basically lets me create a dual zone like Overwatch has in its settings, but I get to choose the point where that dual zone actually kicks in. And personally, I don't really use it in Apex because I think that Apex is ALCs and which is what is it? ALCs, I don't know. Something, I think it's like advanced L control. I don't know. Fucking whatever. Anyway, ALCs are basically you can customize your sense in a lot of ways. I think ALCs are really well built and a good amount of options. In Overwatch, the options aren't as good. And so I'm using this to make effectively a custom dual zone curve. And then also in Overwatch, I am using the Shooter Pro mode, which is the no dead zone and sensitivity plus. And in Overwatch, you can actually tune your dead zone to be like down to the percentage. So in game, I actually have a 2% dead zone. But the reason I prefer having the dead zone in game versus on the controller is I want the controller to send exactly my inputs to the game, and then the game to decide, like the settings in game to decide what to reject and what to keep. Because personally, as I said earlier, I'm not a huge fan of stick drift. In Overwatch, I think it's even more important to just be able to set your crosshair somewhere and reliably know that it's going to stay there. However, the other thing, moving on to the left stick, that I'm doing in Overwatch is I am taking advantage of that strafe speed. So when you play Overwatch on mouse and keyboard, or any shooter on mouse and keyboard, when you AD strafe, you just instantly snappy change directions. In Overwatch on console, though, you get this like slow period of I strafe to the right. Okay, now my thumb's crossing middle as I push it back to the left. And when it crosses middle, you slow down. And in Overwatch, I like did the same thing where I went into the firing range, I went into third person, and I compared the two to see how it looked. In Overwatch, that like snappy direction changing is actually really impactful. Like you can genuinely see the difference. super noticeable. And then when you play in game, like you can feel how much more difficult it is for people to aim at you when you're like snapping back and forth, you're going left and right, and it's just like you're instantly moving in that direction. And the reason for that is Overwatch has no movement acceleration naturally. So Apex has movement acceleration, which basically means you start moving in a direction and it takes you a sec to ramp up to that speed. M&K or console, controller, whatever, it's irrelevant. That movement acceleration is baked into the engine. In Overwatch, there is no movement acceleration, which means when you're playing on a controller, you're actually artificially impeding your movement speed, where the game is just like, instead of calculating it as you're moving left full speed, you're moving right full speed. It's you're moving left full speed, but only at a third of the time, right? So say I strafe left full speed for 1 second, I'd move a certain distance, right? But if I strafe left full speed for a third of that second intermittently, so say like every 10th of a second, I go from either strafing left full speed and then I'm not strafing left full speed, not strafing, right? And then I average that out. That's how Overwatch is the calc for how fast you're moving left to right when you use a controller. That's how it does the analog. It's like an approximate. And because it's an approximate, it's actually really impactful for it to always be at 100%, which is why in Overwatch, I'm actually, my 0.1 is at 1, right? Basically instantaneously the moment I move my stick. And then my 0.2 is at 2, right? And 2 is 99, right? So you have a very steep, just like I'm either strafing left or strafing right at full speed. I'm never partially strafing. And in Overwatch, you don't have like the footstep stuff that's related to how fast you're walking. It's either you're crouching and you're quiet or you're standing up and you're full speed. And so the combination of those two things, and note, I'm also using sensitivity plots on my left stick because genuinely it's so good. Like you get instant raw input. And like, yes, it's doing this processing, but instead of trying to like approximate what you want, it's just doing what you're doing. And it genuinely feels like significantly more responsive. Sorry, I had a couple drinks tonight before I recorded this, which is part of why I'm doing it. I don't really have the confidence to do this shit normally. But anyway. Yeah, so this controller's like feature suite with regards to the software blows every other controller I've ever used out of the water. Like it's not even close. There's also this, which is really cool. It's a little equalizer curve. What this is a custom equalizer curve. As you can see, -12 to 12 dB. These are frequencies. And if you're not like an audio person, you might not really know what these numbers actually refer to, and that's okay. They have custom models that they have built for you. So if you don't really know what they do, you can change them. But basically it's an equalizer curve to enhance the parts of the audio you care about when you're using the headphone jack on the controller. Also super cool, super groundbreaking. Most controllers don't do this. I've been reminiscing about the fact that I don't have a mixer for my gaming setup for a while because I would really like to custom EQ, like parametric EQ, the game sound, because games like Apex, like you get no audio on footsteps so often and it gets you killed. And genuinely, the gunfire, like the sound of my gun shooting is way too fucking loud and I don't need to hear it. Like I know my gun is shooting, I'm shooting it. But I do need to hear when people are walking up on me, and being able to EQ like this can actually help with that a lot. Unfortunately, the sound design of Apex is such that like the frequencies that footsteps are also the same frequencies that gunfire are, so it's not going to help you a ton, but it can help you some if you're really smart about like how you do it. And so having this sort of stuff is really good because also you'll get shit like if you've ever played on Thunderdome and Team Deathmatch, there's always the constant roar of the crowd in the background. You're like, eh! And it's like, bro, shut the fuck up. I don't care about the crowd roar. I wish I could turn it off, but I can't. And this helps with that. And most controllers don't offer this sort of feature. And this is like the type of thing where it's like a software suite that takes your controller and turns it into a tool to make your console do all the things that you could do if you had spent $1,000 more on equipment. And that's crazy because this is a $150 controller, which is also, I mentioned from the previous video, $125 cheaper than the other custom controller I was testing out. So yeah, it's nuts. It's really cool. I recommend it. Highly recommend the controller, and I highly recommend this software suite with it. It's amazing. And like also there's this little test playground where you can see it shows like what it's doing on my right stick, right? So this is X53, Y0. This is what the input is receiving, right? And then it jumps to 100. This is on my right stick, which, as you know from earlier, we have on the right stick, we have this little curve. So basically, until 95% of my stick's actuation, it's staying in that 50% range, and then it jumps up. And it shows that, right? You can see it happening. Boom, jumps, right? And then same for my left stick. If I'm moving it at all, it's 100%. Boom, 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 boom. So I'm strafing, right? And I'm going back and forth and just always, holy fuck, it's so fast, right? Where my Apex, I'll like compare it so you can see. And Apex, my back one more, slot 1. Edit profile, test. And you can see like, yes, it's still fast, but it does track through that middle zone a little bit. But I'm using the thicker control stick to limit that distance as much as possible. And then on the right side, it is actually fully exactly what I'm inputting. But yeah, that's all. I just wanted to share that with you guys. Explo was asking me about what I meant when I said this controller is nuts, and I like it's super cool, and I've never seen anything like it. And so I figured I'd record this because I can't really like easily explain it with just words. I need to like show you what I'm talking about. Anyway, I hope you guys are having a good night, and I will hopefully play with you guys soon.